Holy Rosary Summoner was one of the strongest builds in patch 1.0, but it took a bit of a patch 1.1 to the knee, with several nerfs that compounded to completely change the build. Now, it's less of a minion build that walks through maps, and more of a tanky caster able to burst down enemies with a barrage of golden balls. Nope, don't go there yet, it's too early in the video to go there. But if you're hoping to see the screen, no, that still isn't possible. You can melt enemies, and in fact, there are ways in which the build feels better than ever, because defensively, the conviction changes, and being able to work in anti-magic, actually end up feeling really good. This is especially true thanks to the Peace and Quiet unique relic on Passage. Also, if you're wondering what anti-magic is, it's a defensive stat that allows you to avoid most elemental damage by the time you reach endgame. If you've played Path of Exile, think evasion, but for all elemental damage. And so for now, let's get into a little more detail on the relics, gear, constellations, etc. Alright, so let's start with relics. You can broadly split these into offensive and defensive, though there is a little bit of nuance to it as some of the offensive relics, like Written Promise, are pretty generic, whereas others, such as Golden Chaplet, are specific to the skill. So let's run through them top to bottom, starting with the unique ones. Written Promise gives you base damage. Right now, as you can see from my tooltip, I have 2,170. I get plus 616, which is about 25%, so this is a 25% damage boost, which makes it well worth using in the 4x4 slot. Next up, there is Peace and Quiet. This enhances Passage so that you gain conviction by teleporting near enemies. You're going to be teleporting around anyway. Enemies are generally in front of you rather than behind you, so this naturally synergizes very well, and it means you don't need other sources of conviction recovery, at least outside of a constellation. Now, one thing you'll notice is this has both lightning and plague damage. Yes, this is a lightning to plague conversion build, so those stats can be used interchangeably, and I generally advise getting a bit of each. Something else to note is the suffixes focus on mana and max conviction. The more mana you have, the higher your max conviction can go because conviction is based off of mana now. So those stats are going to be showing up a lot. Skill projectile amount, while not strictly required, is another vector to scale damage. And if you already have a lot of other things, such as a lot of flat damage from additional sources, then it's a good idea to start mixing in things like skill projectile amount. Also, spoiler alert, half of this is just my Veil of Quills gear, so yeah, it has the same stats. Then there is the Golden Chaplet, which causes Holy Rosary to orbit around your minions at a fixed distance. It also gives it a massive damage bonus, so this is pretty much a must-have. You get lightning damage, plague res, bonus plague damage, all the good stats you'd find on a larger relic. Next up, there is Worker's Tools. That is why the Holy Rosary is cast from the minions rather than directly from my character. Think of this as a damage penalty combined with a damage multiplier, because yes, the new base damage is 28%. The damage recovers significantly as you rank the skill up, and especially as you get blessings, like 4,004% is nothing to sneeze at, but it is much lower than the same skill would be if I was casting it manually. The difference is there's 4 minions, or 5 minions with the right blessing, and only 1 of me. So despite the reduction, this does end up being a very significant net gain. Makes clear a little awkward though, because Holy Rosary projectiles now pierce 1 time. So if you don't hit hard enough to kill trash, you'll be casting a lot and ultimately not getting anywhere. Then we have the Bloody Doll. Spells gain damage per active summon. You want more active summons so that your Rosary is copied more times. Thus, this is perfect for scaling your damage. And of course, Call of Guard, because if you cast Rosary with 4 guards, you get 4 rosaries. If you cast it with 8 guards, you get 8 rosaries. Oh, and also minion attack speed and damage do literally nothing for this build, so there's no downside to making your minions double instead of attacking faster. I got quite lucky on this one, +1 max power orb. Again, yes, this is my Veil of Quills gear, and no, I'm not sorry for that. For uniques, last up is Ticket. Passage now takes your summons along with you. This is a very nice quality of life. It's not required, but I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't play the build without it. Now for the rare relics, I'm balancing offense and defense. For example, this small relic has damage against blighted enemies. Since Holy Rosary is being converted over to Plague, the damage it deals is able to blight enemies and build up Wither, making this a very good way to scale damage. In addition, of course, spell hits grant resilience, another good way to scale your defenses as you retain more conviction. Scale projectile amount. The more rosaries you have, first of all, the better your clear feels because of a piercing thing, and second of all, the more damage you do per cast. Oh, and as always, the one normal relic is the one relic that I got that has +1 to level of Holy Rosary skill. Going through these, you'll find a lot of similar stats across them, with the recover mana from potion being a particular favorite of mine. This way, since the build has some mana shield, if I ever get in trouble, run out of mana, all I have to do is hit my potion and it's basically all back. For the stats on them, get enough resistances that you're capped. Ideally, you want to be a bit overcapped. This way you can get hit by bosses, take curse stacks, and not lose anything. The reason why I'm so far overcapped, though, is I've been playing the build on Void, which is a higher difficulty, meaning greater res penalty, greater anti-magic penalty. I would not recommend overcapping either your resistances or your anti-magic to this degree until you're ready to push into that higher world tier. But you have a lot of affixes on small relics, and you're not going to be able to fill all of them with resistances, so after that, look for max conviction and mana. For the implicits, you want either anti-magic to get up to that 95% cap, or max mana, because again, more mana equals more conviction, and you can use both of those as a defensive pool. And while I'm here, now's a good time to talk about gear. First up, on my revolver, I have base damage and lightning damage. You can go with base damage, lightning damage, or you could go with base damage, plague damage. You could go with pure base damage, or base damage and skill projectile amount. The best option there is just going to depend on your specific gear and, more likely, the best gun that you can find. On the left ring, go crit chance. It's really the only stat that applies here. On the right ring, go either base damage or crit damage. Honestly, with where my character is and my stat sheet having 359%, I feel like I'm right on the cusp where either one of these is fine. But if you have lower crit damage, it's going to be more valuable. And if you have extra base damage from other things, especially with the base damage from a blessing, maybe this isn't ideal, but this is a ring that I happen to be using on quills, so that's what I've got here. For cap, look for Phys Res and mana. The higher the better. For chest piece, this is a good place to fix resistances early on, but later I recommend replacing it with either anti-magic or mana shield for additional defenses, as by that point you can probably solve your resistances through relic suffixes. For your shoulders, Conviction Decay Resistance. It is the only option that does anything for this build. For belt, cooldown speed, it's the only option that does anything for this build. Pants, if you need Phys Res really badly, get it here. Otherwise, cooldown speed. Remember, cooldown speed is damage, both directly, as in your spells cast faster, and indirectly in terms of uptime on things like Prayer of Vengeance and Guard's Rage. For boots, prioritize movement speed. After that, get some melee res. On your accessory, go with either max mana or max conviction. This entirely depends on what you have more of on the rest of your gear and your relics. And then last up for the keepsake, mana cooldown speed, though if you're struggling for mana, you can also go mana cost. Okay, next up, Constellations. A lot of these are clustered around the center and lower portion of the tree. So, first up, the Three Marys. Discipline Path, this is primarily for the devotion, but also that crit is quite nice. From there, you want to fill out all of these. You may need to temporarily grab 1 point in 5th devotion to be able to fill out this. But you go all the way up. Yes, that's right, there's plague damage here. The evasion unfortunately doesn't do anything, but the ability to generate agility orbs will be very important later, and hey, movement speed is always good. Next up, over here, mana, especially the multiplicative mana, is very valuable, and being able to generate power orbs is very nice. Technically, you don't need the Thunder of Creation, but hey, it is a little bit of extra damage, and it's mana regeneration, which never hurts. After that, fill out Oxumare. This gives you damage scaling, such as from cooldown speed, projectile damage, spell damage, and reducing all of your cooldowns. Yep, that's right, Oxumare is very, very nice due to the cooldown reduction. From there, your next goal is to be at the 8 Faith, 8 Discipline to unlock the Lightning Conversion Constellation. Then take Elemental Damage, Plague Resistance, and Conversion. Now you can scale lightning damage and plague damage simultaneously, which makes it much easier to find good relics for your build. You probably want to fill out the rest of this constellation to meet the requirements, and you also want to have all of these nodes here, or at least almost all of them. The last one is honestly optional. But plague damage, another bonus. More plague damage. Again, remember, lightning to plague, so this is very good. Blight duration and intensity is quite nice. It makes it easy to keep enemies blighted. And plague damage, 30% multiplicative. Yes, this is multiplicative damage, so it is a priority. Anytime you see an X, go out of your way to get that modifier. Unless it's, negative, in which case, go out of your way to avoid that modifier, unless there's a really good reason to use it. And then, last up, optionally, take this for a little bit more defense. Finally, I round everything out with these nodes down here. First up, the Conviction Constellation. This is absolutely mandatory because it provides a huge amount of max conviction and conviction decay resistance. I can't really imagine playing a conviction build and not taking this. Also, Song of Order is very nice because if you ever mess up, your conviction's reduced to 0. Congratulations, you now have all of your conviction back, as long as it doesn't happen too often. Next up, I really like having the extra defenses here. Res, always good. Max Res is really the point. And then the last point here is just to have enough Fury Devotion. Because I also want this guy. He gives spell damage, cooldown speed, and of course, multiplicative spell damage when at low life. Now, admittedly, this is a bit annoying to use, because if you really want to min-max it, what you have to do is go into your options menu, turn this off, otherwise you'll go insane, turn this off, and turn this off. That way, when you take hits, as you get damaged, your life will go down, it will go below 35%, and then you'll have to play carefully, because if you ever take life damage, you're going to instantly die, or at the very least, proc your second wind, aka the cheat death effect. Alright, so last time when it came to skills and blessings, I talked over the skills, then did the blessings. This time, I want to do things a little bit differently, and go into more details about the skill and its blessings at the same time. Hopefully this will present a clearer and more accurate picture. First though, what do you take for your Blessing of Foundation? Focus on the mana tree, Blessing of Spirit. Start with maximum mana, then mana regeneration, followed by minus skill mana cost. And yes, this is unfortunately a bit counterproductive as it hurts your ability to spend mana to generate conviction, but it leads to Blessing of Spirit 4, which is 500 flat damage, at least if you're around 7,000 mana at all times, which you really should be once you reach the endgame. After this, you can invest into either the Elemental Damage or Crit Blessings. Elemental Damage, because it double dips. You're dealing Plague damage, but also scaling off of Lightning, and you can eventually lower enemy Plague resistance. Crit, because, well, crit is almost always good, and it leads to either a very big bump in crit chance and damage, or 50% projectile damage. If you go crit though, I'm going to advise against taking the 100% increased projectiles blessing. Yes, more projectiles is more damage, but with the way the projectiles work now, piercing only a limited number of times, it feels really bad to lower their base DPS by that much. Last up, if you're just speed farming and don't need damage at all, go for movement speed. I also recommend using one of your banishes here, either on life or physical damage. This way it's much easier to get the blessings of Foundation that you want as you progress through the run. Now what about skills? Well, first up, Holy Rosary, which is your main skill. This is what you spam on single target damage and cast a little bit more sparingly on clear. You want to level it as much as possible. For blessings, you want to balance things between damage and skill speed. Damage to kill stuff as quickly as possible, and skill speed because you're going to have to hardcast this a fair bit. Now because the projectiles only pierce once, they cease existing pretty quickly. So things like projectile speed and duration aren't particularly helpful for this build, and are instead good targets for your banishes. Next up, Prayer of Vengeance, a supporting skill that gives you crit chance and crit damage. Level this up a little bit, but not too much. I recommend somewhere between level 3 and level 5. This way you should have the active effect where the buff is more intense almost 100% of the time, But you're also getting as much of a bonus as possible. If you had it at level 1, uptime is very easy, but the bonuses are less potent. If you have it at level 7, the bonuses are more potent, but they won't always be up. And pretty much everything is good in terms of blessings here. Don't worry about it too much, and just go for the highest rarity. Next up you have Judgment. Max out the level, and use this especially on bosses and tanky rares to shred their plague resistance. This also means when it comes to blessings, you should focus on increasing the plague and physical shred. You do plague damage, not lightning damage. Beyond that, you can grab some quality of life with either the AoE or shred duration nodes, but these aren't super impactful and you should only take them if there's nothing else good on offer. I also recommend here using one of your banishes on the fire lightning shred, as this doesn't increase your DPS. Next we have Summon the Guard. Don't level this one. Level 1 is totally fine because all you want from this is the high uptime on Guard's Rage. This is the active portion of the skill, and yes, the cooldown does go up as the skill level increases. When it comes to blessings, +1 Guard is a huge DPS bump. Not only is +1 Guard, +1, or, with the Rage buff up, +2 additional Rosaries, but your damage is also further scaled through Bloody Doll. Unfortunately, none of the other blessings on this skill contribute to your damage, at least not beyond these skill ranks providing a little cooldown speed, which leaves the skill in an awkward spot, because it has a really good epic blessing, but you aren't really incentivized to banish or take any of the other blessings, meaning it's pretty unlikely the epic is going to come up during a run. Last but not least, Passage, which you also shouldn't level. You want the cooldown as low as possible to gain Conviction, so focus on Conviction gain and cooldown reduction blessings. Okay, if you really want, you could level it and you could do good damage with it, but then you will move slowly and you'll be squishy and it'll be a sad panda, so don't do it unless you want to be a sad panda. Alright, so Bell Tree, and rough priority for how to fill it out. I always like starting with the Soulstone gain, because more Soulstones equals higher memory levels. That also means pathing up here to get the 4th blessing. This really makes a significant difference, and at that point, you'll also want to pick this up as soon as this node unlocks. Then, coming left, Blessing Banish and Red Portal. Those are a lot of key mechanics, but the next thing to do, head down here, fill out some damage, and as soon as you get hit by one of those locks, head to the right for Second Wind, again, another key mechanic as you always want to cheat death, and up to the left for Crit Chance, because Crit Chance is one of the best ways to scale your damage. This forms the core of your tree, going all the way down here for damage and all the way up here for resources. The remaining points are up to you, so if you need more resistances, go here. If you're struggling to maintain your conviction, consider picking up extra potion healing amount nodes or extra potion. On the other hand, if you're looking to get extra defenses, you can go into anti-magic or mana shield. Anti-magic is a chance to avoid non-physical damage, whereas mana shield takes a portion of damage from your mana. These are both great defensive stats to have, and they're found here and over here, which is pretty convenient because you'll want to be in these places for the conviction for mana spent, conviction decay resistance, and max mana anyway. All of these stats are very good for your build, so you naturally fill out this stuff and this stuff. The reason that I do not take minus skill mana cost is because I don't need it, and if I'm investing into conviction from mana spent, it doesn't make sense to spend less mana. In fact, if anything, a relic to increase my mana costs would be a little bit more beneficial. Okay, in this section, I want to take some time to talk about the major changes to the build because of patch 1.1. If you played the 1.0 version, it's very different now in a lot of ways, some of which make it feel better, and some of which make it feel worse. First up, the old playstyle of summoning minions and then walking through the map is gone. Instead, it's replaced with teleporting your minions around, using either Passage or Call the Guard, and then bursting things down by spamming Holy Rosary. This means no more Old Bell. There's 2 reasons for this. First, the Old Bell's cooldown was increased in patch 1.1. Also, Oxumare, the main cooldown recovery engine, was nerfed. It is much harder to get extremely low cooldowns on skills that have a naturally short cooldown. And so the end result is, I never got to a point where using the Old Bell felt good. I felt like I was either constantly summoning my minions or spamming Rosary. But if I summoned my minions, all of their Rosary projectiles disappeared. And if I spammed Rosary, all of my minions disappeared. I think the fact that Rosary doesn't keep spinning endlessly and you have to hardcast it also really takes away from this playstyle. Which is why I dropped Bead Necklace from the setup as well. When speed farming, just burning through easy content like Abyss if you're already able to farm Oblivion, then it's still great. But as you push into higher tiers of content, especially where you are not guaranteed to one-shot things with a single Rosary ball, you're likely to run into a problem where your Rosary is going to kill a couple enemies in the pack, but not have enough damage to clear the entire thing as you run by. And as you're running, you are not covering enough distance to summon multiple Rosaries. So for now, I would consider this to be optional and only use it when speed farming. Another change to Worker's Tools is that Rosary no longer scales off of minion damage, so rip all of those fun minion damage relics. The last big change is a positive one, and that is that Holy Water is gone. But this is still a conviction build. How is that? Well, let me introduce you to my little friend, Peace and Quiet. This is Holy Water, but better, because you no longer need to worry about collecting potions and can just teleport through all of the enemies to gain your conviction. This makes the build much easier to play, and while the total amount of conviction you have is lower than in patch 1.0, relative to the damage you're taking, you will feel incredibly tanky once you get 100,000 or so, and it's much easier to sustain that conviction. So yes, the build is quite different now, but it's still pretty darn good. And so I'm going to wrap everything up with a few tips and tricks. These are based on my experience playing the build in Abyss, Oblivion, and a little bit of Void. I didn't level with this setup. And so I guess that begs the first question, how would I level? Well, I did level this character as Veil of Quills, and I suspect Rosary should be quite similar, where, once you get to Act 2, focus on obtaining the core uniques, Worker's Tools, Golden Chaplet, and Bloody Doll. You can always add the conviction scaling later on. And I also suspect that, much like my experience on Veil of Quills in Act 2, it might be a good idea to add in Bombardment to have that little bit of extra AoE while you're getting your build off the ground. Second of all, don't underestimate additional projectiles. Not only do they add damage, but they make the build much smoother to play, especially when clearing. I found I was able to kill bosses with relative ease and safety thanks to the plague damage. Wither freezing enemies is really good. When I hit a large pack of enemies, even if each one was individually pretty weak, and especially if there's a tanky rare mixed in, I struggled to clear them all. So, invest into relic affixes and imbuements that give you additional projectiles. Again, I don't recommend the Blessing of Foundation because it lowers your damage output, which doesn't fix the issue. Now you have more projectiles, but they do less damage, so you still don't clear the pack. Third up, what do you do if you keep dying on bosses? How can you get tankier? Well, I'm going to assume you already have a good amount of conviction. If not, get max conviction, mana, and of course, percent mana. But if you already have that, you can start by investing into anti-magic. Find this on the tree, and as a faith imbuement on small relics. This gives you a chance to avoid damage based on your max mana, since you're already stacking a lot of it. Once you get this to 95%, you are going to be avoiding most of the incoming hits. It's sort of a hybrid between armor and evasion from Path of Exile. Next up, Mana Shield can split some of that damage to your mana. If you get 100%, it can split all of that damage to your mana. And as long as you don't go this is free defenses. Last up, don't underestimate the value of overcapping your resistances. Usually you die on bosses because Curse lowers your resistances well below 75%. So, the more resistances you have, the longer this can take, and the more mistakes you can make on a fight. Don't go overboard with this. I don't recommend getting like 300%. That's going to seriously tax your mana and other stats. But a little bit over the 75% will feel very good and bolster your survivability. Next, when it comes to scaling damage, get levels on your Holy Rosary. Skill levels are always good, but I found them to be particularly impactful here to offset the way the Worker's Tools lower your base damage. Worker's Tools drastically lowers your damage at level 1, but it has less of an impact the higher your skill level becomes. So get Corrupting or hope for a lucky drop. Last up, because I know someone's going to ask it in the comments, can you play Bleed? This is neither a tip nor a trick, but yes, you can play Bleed. I messed around with it a little bit, and the damage felt great despite my gear being very scuffed. The only major downside is that visibility is even worse than the plague damage version. All of your rosary balls turn red, and enemy attacks are red, so you can't see shit. But hey, if you're tanky enough to not die, and you kill the enemies quickly, this isn't a problem. There's also the awkward thing where if you use Passage, you don't get bleed explosions, and if you use Shadow Dash, you don't get to carry your minions along. That's an awkward problem that I'm just going to pretend doesn't exist until I play Bleed Rosary. So I guess get subscribed if you want to see a Bleed Rosary build in the future, as that may happen, especially if I explore it in Ascension. But that's about it for Holy Rosary Summoner in patch 1.1. Now, if you're looking for something that's a little bit smoother, has a little more quality of life, I recommend checking out Veil of Quills. This is my favorite skill, and it's still great. It has all of the defensive benefits from Peace and Quiet and the conviction changes, and doesn't have to deal with that awkward positioning your minion stuff, which can definitely happen on Holy Rosary. That'll be up in the card and down below. Also, if you want a planner to follow, there's one over at Maxwell GG. That'll also be linked down below. For now, I'm going to get going, but thank you very much for watching to the end. If you enjoyed, leave a like, and with that, I'll see you in the next one.